No, it's not. It's not. Then again, yes. Oh.
Testing, hello.
This is mine.
Yes. I'm trying to learn more about
Testing, hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm sorry, this microphone's a lot quieter, so I'll do my best. My name is Kelly Beckson, Elder at Paradox Ministries, and I'm so excited that all of you are here today. And a special welcome to everyone joining us on Facebook Live. Why don't we start with a brief prayer. God, thank you so much for bringing us together to celebrate love and to celebrate all of your children. Please bless this place and help us to have an open and productive dialogue and to draw closer to you and each other in love. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. So, thank you so much for coming today. I'm just going to read a brief statement because Craig wasn't able to be here today. Paradox Church exists to see and embrace Jesus Christ in all. This includes all persons from different gender identities and sexual orientations. All LGBT persons reflect and bear the image of the divine, and as a church, we are fully affirming of this image and celebrate everyone in their humanity. For this discussion today, we invite you to look at this as a way to better understand and include LGBT people in American Christianity in 2017. So without further ado, I'd love for the panel to briefly introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Colin George Babb. I am a member of the Paradox Church. I've been since its inception. Really excited. You got some, not exactly sure what to do in introduction. This is my first time doing the panel, so. Oh, I identify as a gay man. Fun, right? Really interesting. That comes with its own challenges and its own opportunities, and I'm glad to share them with you guys.
I'm Alicia Johnson. About 4.5 months ago, I was an MS pastor and came out as bisexual/queer and no longer an MS pastor. And just been doing a lot of advocacy since then.
My name is Rhonda. I am a member of the Hollywood, California Seventh-day Adventist Church and an ordained elder there. And you can tell by my voice I'm transgender, and I identify as a woman.
My name is Braden Schwartz, and I am gay. Yeah, I'm gay. Was born gay, always probably will be gay. And I am a Christian, which is probably the most significant part of me, not the fact that I'm gay. And so I'm glad that I'm here, glad that everybody's here showing support, because it does mean a lot, the faces that are up here and the faces that are not up here. So thank you guys for being here.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Finn. I'm a medical student at Melinda and identify as queer. Currently just working on a lot of others with the LGBT community here and trying to get support for this. Started here.
Perfect, thank you. And so for those of you who have not filled out a question on the cue cards, feel free to turn in your cards anytime throughout the program to Olivia and Kevin if you raise your hands. And for those of you on Facebook Live, feel free to comment with a question and we'll do our best to get that up front as well. So just to get things started, we would love to hear about, in your different interactions within Christianity, what have you found is the biggest source of change for someone maybe opening up to this conversation more than they have in the past?
how does this work? Just anybody?
Yeah. So whoever has the microphone, feel free to answer.
I'll just jump in really quick.
I would say the first thing that is the precursor to any change will and always be love. And a good example is the first time that you come out to your parents. My parents, they were not accepting at first, but they came around. Why? Because they love me. And parents' love is unconditional for the most part, and for those that are blessed to have that ability. But that sort of love is kind of is kind of the reason and the pushing force behind people starting to change the way that they think and open up their minds to see things in a different light. And so I would say love is the best answer. Once you start to let that love for people and humanity into your heart, the changes that you'll start to see happen within the values of the people around you it's amazing.
I'll give a little bit of a more cynical answer. So I recently came across a Barna study that I posted on Facebook that said that 87%, so almost 9 out of 10 of evangelicals would feel uncomfortable and feel like it would be difficult to have like a normal conversation with like an LGBT person. So I think it's recognizing the humanity in another person, that like I can have a conversation with this person. It doesn't have to be weird. Like I would be so uncomfortable with them and their identity that I can't have a conversation, which is difficult. And unfortunately, the thing that seems to make it easiest for people to do that is when a queer person is as close to them as possible. And that's one of the major challenges, because if they look as much as possible like me, if they have a family construction that is as much as possible like mine, then I'm more willing to accept and affirm them. I think that, to me, that's the real challenge, because there's other members of the LGBT community who maybe present a little less and are a little bit less like the mainstream, and it makes it really hard. That's why it feels like we're gaining ground by inches, I think, sometimes. Whereas, wouldn't it be nice if it was, we just want to stop trying to control other people and like love and accept people and kind of affirm them for their decisions instead of thinking those are our decisions. Yeah. The cynical answer.
For me, it's more, I interact with a lot of people who love to learn, who love to study. I interact with many proud Raven applause. And they're the type of people who genuinely want to learn about me, learn about my experiences. Not just my experiences, obviously, but they don't like the idea of, their world is changing, things that they previously didn't understand are becoming more and more prevalent, more and more vocal and more around them, and they do not like the idea of having a broad opinion about something that they don't know about. So I really admire, and I really think that the best thing for learning more about queer people is the idea that they just that desire, that true desire to want to learn, not to quote unquote hear what I have to say, but then correct me in something when I'm wrong, but just genuinely say considered before. And I'd like to use that to better my experiences and interactions with other people like you. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So our next question is, how does your identity affect your theology? And anyone can jump in and answer.
Starting off with the easy one.
I can fix that. Do it. All right. Look at this is fun. So my identity. So my identity as a gay man has affected my theology in that it has vastly changed and so greatly kind of diminished. Like, because I came out when I was 14, 15 years old, and as a result, I had to learn and understand a lot of things, a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts more than my peers at school or even a lot of elders did in my church. So from a way earlier age than a lot of people I know, I had to very deeply analyze, well, okay, my theology says this, but what's going on the inside clearly goes against that. So then I had to go into studying the history of it and studying context and relationships and everything else. I'm just like, that is, not only does the theology not really align with what I am clearly feeling and clearly experiencing, but there's a lot of things in the theology that I've been raised with that just do not align with who I want to be as a person. So I mean, so the sad thing is, in coming to terms with my identity, my theology is just gone on a steady decline. In terms of like scripture and standard teachings that I've been raised with in the Adventist church. I'm just like, yeah, I'm not really about that anymore. Not really. That doesn't really speak to me anymore. And I can probably tell you why too. Is that too dark? Is that sad in a way? Because when I usually tell people that, they're just like, oh, you poor thing. It's like, oh, I don't feel that way.
Yeah, for me, it's something that has come in stages, whereas the first thing that it did was make me really unable to ignore the consequences of our theology for people in the LGBT community. And, you know, it might have even made me more aware of all different types of vulnerable groups and seeing theology not as a means for supporting the status quo and keeping things from changing and reinforcing institutions, but instead seeing the work of God in the world to bring about justice and change and compassion and being interested in the quality of people's lives. I've seen a lot of people use theology in such a way that kind of distances faithfulness to God from the quality of people's lives, particularly for vulnerable people. It's a little bit of a bait and switch, right? Like, come to Jesus and you will be happy. And then you come to Jesus and it's like, well, you should be faithful even if it doesn't make you happy. So it's a little bit of a bait and switch situation that goes on there. But it's really forced me. I don't think you can really be LGBT without it challenging your theology. It's really forced me to say, I don't have the support of the institution anymore, affirming for me that all these things are okay, because the institution has really rejected something that's central to who I am, something that's good, beautiful, and holy about me has been rejected. And so now I no longer have the same level of trust in the institution I used to have. So it forces a reworking of a lot of things. And you see a lot of theology being used in a way to cause harm to people, and in a way that's really against the basic principles of Scripture of love, justice, peace, joy, harmony, and all those things. Then you go back to your faith and you're like, I'm not sure which parts of that I can trust anymore. And so I need to kind of go through it all, re-examine it again. It forces a total re-examining of your faith in a way that is wonderful and beautiful, and it's such a huge gift. Like, I'm so grateful for my sexuality because of the way it has opened me up to an understanding of God. I'm seeing now it's from other folk in the congregation because it's a common experience. It's a common experience. It forces your faith to grow up. It has to grow up. So, it has to grow up.
My identity, my coming out took place over a considerable period of time. I started late in life, in my early 60s, when I was married to a wonderful woman, to whom I am still married, now at the age of 75. Somehow we've stuck it out. I could not begin to tell you all that we've been through. But how has it affected my theology, my identity? During this slow coming out process, I left the church. Not because I wanted to, but just because I didn't feel like I would be welcome anymore in any church, so certainly not any Adventist church. At least that's what I believed in my heart. But after coming to a full realization of who I am and going through a complete transition process, emotionally, I realized all these clobber texts that have been used to bash LGBT people, they've just got to be wrong in the way they're interpreted. I decided I've got to get in there and do some deep study, because it's so easy to do a very hasty surface reading of any Bible text and you get a quick impression, and then you go on to the next verse or set of verses and say, oh, that's that, and you don't go back and don't look at it deeply, you don't look at the history, you don't look at the culture, the people were in when this was written, and all of these things need to be looked at very carefully to get a clear understanding of what was intended. And so my coming out has forced me to study more deeply what the Bible says to me. And now I am comfortable in my own skin as a result of that.
Going off of what Rhonda said, diving back into theology after sometimes being raised is so familiar, these concepts that you know are true, they're just have been true, always have been true, and you think always will be true. And when you start to pluck away at theology, it's scary. Like what Colin says, it's kind of like it's a process that you start to realize, okay, you know what? Maybe what it says about me and who I am is wrong, and I need to study that more. But then there's 5 more questions that pop up, and it says, well, then what about this? And then what, do I need to study this differently? And it's a scary process, especially when you've been rooted in this for so long. And the beautiful thing about studying theology is it's, even though it might be a scary process, regardless the answer that you find, it brings you closer to God, because that's the nature of what it is to pursue theology. That's the nature of what it is to try to pursue answers. Is regardless of how terrifying and ground-shaking it might be to who you are, it still brings you closer to God. So it's this exciting process where you are not just finding out new things about yourself, but finding beliefs that open up your eyes about how big the God is that we actually serve, because his love is unsurmounting and is not confined to a single gender or orientation or anything. And I think once you come to that realization that God is so much bigger than what I have always thought he was, it's the most beautiful realization, because man, my entire life I've thought God was one thing. And because of this difficult process I've had to go through my life, and because I've had to seek the difficult answers, the difficult questions, I have this beautiful understanding of how big God is. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, because God is so, so big. So I think everybody here has kind of added a different piece of that conversation. It is hard, it is emotionally difficult and trying, but it brings you so close to God because you're asking real questions. And I think it's a very healthy thing. And I think whether you're gay, straight, lesbian, whatever you are, you need to question your theology. If your theology cannot stand the test of fire, why are you believing it? Ask yourself the difficult questions and find the answers. And your relationship with God will flourish because of it.
So I kind of wrestled with this back in college when I was kind of coming to terms with myself and my faith, which was very Catholic-based. So there was a lot of struggle, and there was a lot of doubt, and a lot of, well, if I've been taught just that this is wrong, then how could I be so happy, and how come I'm not getting a clear sense of logic from studying the text and everything like that. And then it kind of, I think a lot of people go through doubt and confusion, but the way that I kind of figured out, this is how I'm going to live my life or believe whatever I believe, is to prioritize people over doctrines. And when I look at the actions and the fruits of what people believe, it's pretty clear when it's harming people or if it's helping people, and if people put their doctrines before people, you see a lot of harm, and that's where you see a lot of the hurt and discrimination from the church to the LGBT community, because their beliefs come first and the people come second. So for me, that was a big realization when I had to switch. I can't just think about all these issues in black and white terms the way I was raised. I have to slowly unlearn a lot of my beliefs and a lot of my upbringing to fit my experience and to see the world like differently.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. It's very personal to share kind of how your faith has changed over the years, and we really appreciate that. Just to dig a little bit deeper on that subject, now that you've talked about kind of your inner battle and look at theology, I'd love to hear when the inevitable moment happens when someone comes to you and says, but I believe homosexuality is a sin, I believe being gay is a sin. How do you respond to that in that moment? What is your go-to answer that you kind of use to maybe try to change their mind?
I love that question because the way I address it probably, and I fully recognize that it's not the most mature way, it's not the most, but it's my way, and that's my way. You'll see. No, usually, I've had so many people just like right out of the starting gate just say, oh, but you being gay is wrong, and I'm just like, no, you're wrong, and here's why. It's not like, I recognize that that's not the best way to get them to listen to my opinion, but I hear it so weirdly often that I just throw up all pretense and I'm just more concerned with just like, yeah, no, give me what you got. Well, thanks. And they cite one of the cover verses. I'm just like, well, okay. Well, those same verses that you look before, you look after say that you can't do this, that, and the other, and I see that you've broken at least 3 of those. But then they'll say, oh, but how can you, 2 men or 2 women in a relationship can't reproduce? I'm just like, so lots of people can't reproduce. That's a thing. They're just like, yeah, single people can't reproduce. He did not. People who get married at a certain age, they, to the best of my knowledge, can't reproduce, but it doesn't mean it's possible. But then they'll say things like, oh, but I just don't see how you could put your hands on another man. I'm just like, I could show you, but that would be awkward for everyone involved. And so, are you regretting letting me go? So yeah, so I'll freely admit I don't handle it in the most mature way, but I do it, and I respond in a way that's really more standing up for myself than trying to comfortably support your worldview, which is wrong. You're clearly not correct. I've been through a lot. I've been through so much that I kind of just feel like I don't have to be polite to justify my own existence. I don't have to be kind about it. If you are going to start with saying that my very humanity is wrong based on your rather minimal worldview, yeah.
I didn't want to answer this at first because it's not an easy question to answer because there's no reaction that I would say is necessarily wrong, because even though we're supposed to treat people with love always, when somebody sometimes looks at you and calls you something that really hurts you to the core, when they tell you that who you are is an abomination or less than who I am, you want to lash out. And initially, when I first I came out, I wouldn't say later in life, but I came out I didn't know. I resisted the fact that I was gay until I was 19. I lived my life as a very resilient, Christian, homophobic guy. I honestly was very homophobic. You can ask Colin.
I'll get back to
there's some backstory.
There is some backstory, and we will address that again.
But it's crazy where life takes you, because Colin and I never would have had our previous histories, I probably wouldn't be here.
Like honestly, this being right here is a perfect example of loving enemies and forgetting your enemies.
Okay, yeah. So we'll follow back up with that story. But how to react to somebody? I've refined my process, because initially you hit them over the head with some loving theology. You say that, you know what, these verses that you use to, tell me that I'm wrong, I'm going to use them to tell you that you're wrong. And you start to argue back and forth with theology. And it's an ugly conversation. It's an ugly battle. And that's where we've been for the longest time just back and forth, and it's either on this side or you're on that side. And then we just stopped talking about it after a while. And that was what was so frustrating, because it's like, are we missing the point? Like Caitlin said, are we putting theology over people? And that's what it came down to. And my dad, actually, I have a really great relationship with my dad now. He was the person that kind of helped me refine my approach from being very theologically combative to just simplifying it and just simply saying, he has a good Mennonite friend. I don't know if you know Mennonites, but for those of you that are familiar with the Seventh-day Adventist religion, which I'm sure a lot of us in here are, but it's fairly conservative as far as the things that you should and should not do. And I still claim to be Seventh-day Adventist. I'm not knocking it. Don't throw a Bible at me. But Mennonites are Adventists on steroids. They're pretty much like Amish people, but you can drive cars. Sorry if you're Mennonite and that's all wrong. But regardless, one of my dad's really good friends is Mennonite. And when I came out, he told my dad to kick me out of the house. He says, if you love God, what you will do to help your son, if you love God and you love your son, you will kick him out of the house because he needs to know the way that God, his view is and his stance on this is. And my dad, with grace and elegance, which he typically doesn't have, but he just simply responded and said, is your son without sin? And he's like, no. And did Christ not die for your son's sin? No, he died for my son's sin. And if he died for your son's sin, you're saying he didn't die for my son's sin? No, he died for his sin too. Then where are we going with this conversation? And you have to realize that what is important is people, not theology. Theology, yes, it is important to you. Your theology is important to you, not to her. Your theology is important to you. Keep it, cherish it, love it. It is a personal thing. And your belief is the most precious thing that you can have. But keep it, I wouldn't say keep it to yourself, but respect other people's beliefs and opinion. That's all that I will say. But as far as how it's refined, I would say currently, I was actually just asked, I was sitting out there in the courtyard before this started, and we were sitting out there kind of waiting for people to show up because I thought it was out there. And some random people came by with their kids, and they said, hey, what are you guys doing here? And I said, well, we're waiting for a panel to talk about, and I kind of told them what it was all about, and they looked at me like, you're doing that here? And I said, yeah. And she immediately, right out of the gate, said, well, what do you say when somebody asks you the question about, well, doesn't the Bible say that a man shouldn't lie with another man? Like, just straight out of the gate. I was like, nice to meet you, too. And my answer was just simple. You just keep the main thing. First of all, I didn't say that, but you try to simplify it to the point where you just say, you know what is important is that we love each other. And what's frustrating as a gay person is to see the gay community also respond back to people that don't love them with an even more unloving response. Because you want to talk about hypocrisy, it's when you have a community of people that strive so hard for love and acceptance for the ways that they believe, but when they don't choose to accept other people for the way that they believe, it's just as bad. So it's a two-way street. Love is a two-way street. Understanding is a two-way street. And so as long as you tell somebody, hey, you know what, I'm not trying to change you. I'm not trying to change your beliefs. I'm just trying to love you, and I just want you to do the same. I feel like the best way to respond is not to hit them over with theology in a kind way. It's just to love them. Be an example. Be the gay person that they can see Christ through, and maybe they'll rethink the issue about homosexuality, because maybe there could be a good gay Christian. Yeah.
I think the way I would respond to those kinds of questions, at least I hope I would be as much like Jesus was when he was asked questions that oftentimes seemed like the people who were asking them were trying to get Jesus caught up in a dilemma of where if I answer it this way, I'm in trouble, if I answer it that way, I'm in trouble. And oftentimes when that happened, Jesus just turned the tables on them and started asking questions himself. And you can do that almost in any situation, but you have to be very careful in the way you ask questions, because you can do it in such a way as to offend people, and you can also do it in such a way as to draw them out and to help them to see a clearer picture of who you are if you're loving when you do it.
For me, there's a very practical evaluation process first. The first process of the evaluation is to evaluate myself and whether it's good for my mental health to engage in that conversation at all. Because you have to first and foremost guard your own mental health and sanity in these kind of situations. Because it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So that's number one. The second is the person I'm talking to, like, are they just trying to cause a stink and be antagonistic? Or are they actually open to some kind of a dialogue? So that, evaluating that, and 90% of the time they're not interested in dialogue, so it doesn't really matter what I say, so then I get started. And, yeah, it's really interesting how people can tell you that the way you think of love and family is sinful, and you're supposed to be okay with that, but when you tell them their theology is sinful, they lose it. But at any rate, so sometimes I do that, I'm sorry. But if there is some level of openness, you know, you try to look for, like, is there some, like, maybe curiosity or humility here? Or is it just like scripture is clear, close the case, you're wrong, you're just doing whatever you want. So I try to encourage curiosity and humility if it's not there. And if it is there, then I try to engage in a conversation and maybe do some education. It's very rare, I think, as an LGBT Christian to run across like a straight Christian who knows as much about these issues as we do. So I don't often find, like, you know, the whole idea that we're going to engage in an equal dialogue. Well, like I've read like so many books, and I've looked at all these arguments and you haven't. So how are we going to have an equal dialogue here? Right, not to mention that I live it every day. So I don't actually approach it as we're going to have an equal dialogue. If I ran into somebody who had studied it and lived with it as much as I did, then it would be great, yeah, let's have an equal dialogue. That's pretty uncommon. But anyways, and often I just refer them to my blog. I'm like, hey, guess what? Some people disagree with that. You can read about it here if you want to know. So those are kind of the ways they deal with it. No, often they won't. But I also wanted to respond a little bit, and push back a little bit about what Braden said about the LGBT community not being accepting of Christians. Because I think that there's a fundamental difference between rejecting someone based on their chosen belief system and rejecting someone based on a quality about themselves that they can't change. And that difference really shows up in the fact that the suicide rates for kids who are raised in God-affirming, usually Christian, or some type of fundamentalist faith homes are 8.4 times more likely to commit suicide. You don't see that the reverse, right? Like straight kids raised in gay families don't. Yeah, like you don't. There's no other side of that statistic where Christians experience dramatic mental health challenges and have risk of suicide and have shame and guilt because of their interactions with the LGBT community. So many times that response of just like anger and shut down and I won't even talk to you is a method of survival and self-preservation. And it's just because they've been told a million times, I love you, by someone who's just trying to get close enough to like dig the knife in and try to convince them that they're wrong. So that's kind of maybe I have a little bit more of a, I kind of get it kind of attitude. I totally get why so many LGBT people walk away from faith. I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking as one of those people, I think that it depends on who's saying it. If it is another queer or closeted or trans person who's conflicted about themselves and their faith, I think I would like to say that God is also queer. God doesn't have a gender, and gender was invented by us. And there's a lot of times to back that up, but I think just realizing that, you know, you are who you are and we can't really change that, and then knowing that God also hasn't said all these things if it's like a text written by somebody, and it's only like a line or two. So if that's going to cause like a lot of grief in your faith or in your journey, that I would consider reevaluating different sources and also seeing what else people have to say about, gender and sex and what does it actually mean to be like not straight.
So you touched a lot on people that may approach you with malintent, but I'd love to hear, and as you're getting water, you can think about this. How do you respond, or what are some things that maybe more progressive Christians or Christians that consider themselves allies, are there things they think that they're progressive about that are actually harmful? Or are there things that you wish that your Christian allies would do better for you? And while they're still getting water, I'd also just like to put it out there that it's not too late to submit a question. Just raise your hand and Kevin or Olivia will get you a card. And then we can make sure those get answered. Colin.
If you're gonna say something,
Okay.
do it. Go for it.
I think it's okay. A lot of Christians like to say, like group people, like try to include LGBT people as like we're all sinners and we're all broken. That really only comes up in this specific context and never anything else. So that's actually not helpful. And yeah, I think it's important to see the people first as people and not as like issues or problems that need to be addressed. So I know there's a lot of behind it, but not all LGBT people are in distress or need help or need your support, like in the way that we like to say that we're all broken and we need to be there specifically for these people.
I like to, and I'm very optimistic and very just positive about a lot of things, as you guys can probably tell, but I don't think that there is a bad way to be an ally. I think there's a lot of ways that you can become a better ally, but I think showing up, first of all. I know, I love this. You and I, we will have great discussions. I love these type of environments. But one of the things that I can tell you personally in my life, the people that have showed support and been allies to me, when they have gone the extra mile and have, I've always gone to church. I've been one of those gay people that fought to keep my faith and fought for my place to be in church and let people take votes to see whether I should be there or not. But I decided that I wanted to fight to be there. And because of that, I gained some allies. And what was even better, when I finally had a partner that I wanted to bring to church, when those allies came up to me and they wanted to know about my partner and they wanted him to be in church just as much as they wanted me. They knew me, they loved me, they'd seen me grow up, but somebody that was new, that was my addition, my love, to see them go out of their way to not just accept me, but accept them, and to also just ask questions, like not pointed questions, not about my sexuality, but about my relationship. I'm in a relationship just like everybody else, and just like you'd ask somebody that's my age about, are you planning on getting married anytime soon? Well, you know what? That might be a good question to ask. It might make you feel a little uncomfortable at first because you're asking a question about my personal relationship that is exactly the same as anybody else's relationship. So I'd say I love all the allies in my life, and there's no wrong way to go about loving a gay person. That's my belief. People might disagree, but that's my belief because I appreciate the effort, even if it comes across in a bad way. The intention behind it is loving, and I appreciate that. But how to do it better? I would say just go the extra mile and be personal about it. Get to know the person rather than just accepting them and saying, yeah, you know what, I love you, you can stay there, get to know them, find out about their life story, ask questions, that's what I would say.
So, somewhat conversely, I do have a lot of people in my life who like to consider themselves allies, and without going into too much detail, I'm not the biggest fan of the term. Because a lot of the people I know who consider themselves allies, they're really more just the type of people who are just like, oh yeah, I totally like dig it, love wins, but that's the extent of it. It's more just like saying that they support me and they support people like me. But at the same time, do they ever want to? I know some people who are in my life who they love me and they support me and they love and support my idea of being in relationships. But if I say, hey, do you want to go to this one bar? They play great music. It's a really great atmosphere. Just like, oh, it's also a gay bar. They're just like, don't really want to go. Just like, oh, okay then. Or we could be watching a movie, or we're trying to figure out what movie to watch. I'm just like, oh, well, we could watch this. It's about this gay guy who, and then suddenly they just check out. It's like as soon as it's like just like when I ask them, when I'm just trying to creep them out of their comfort zone, they sort of just buckle down and they just kind of just don't want to. Oh, well, I'm just like, well then, no, you're not really an ally. You're more just like you like me as a person, and that's great. I like that, but there's this really important aspect of my personality, at least to me anyway, that you're kind of not really opening yourself up to. And I would say if you want it to be like kind of what Braden said, like if you want to be a good ally, it's not just it's the little things too. It's like asking me about my certain interests, or if I'm engaging in a relationship. But also, I would encourage you to go the extra mile, like read books written by gay authors or about gay characters, see movies or TV shows, and that feature really heavily gay themes and subject matter. Learning about the culture, learning about the history, not joking about my community's history with HIV and AIDS. Yes, I do have people who consider themselves allies and joke about them. But things like that, like actually going the extra mile, going the extra distance, learning about our history, learning about people like me who have impacted your lives in some way, whether you realize it or not. Because there's a difference between just liking somebody who is gay, but then actually being an ally who recognizes what the community goes through, recognizing shortcomings or mistreatment anywhere. And another thing, like, don't put up with any crap from people who very clearly are not trying to support you in any way. If you put up with the horrible things that they say or do, you're kind of just as bad because you're sort of just like standing by and letting it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys touched on some of the social aspects. When I think about being an ally, one of the things I believe strongly is that, like, I don't get to decide whether I'm an ally to trans people. Rhonda gets to decide that. I don't get to decide whether I'm an ally to people of color. People of color get to decide that. Being an ally isn't something that you get to be. It's something that you get to try to be, and the people who actually are under the gun, they're the ones who get to decide whether you're an ally or not. So having pride about being an ally, like, isn't a thing that actual allies do. It's not. I've got amazing, unbelievable allies in my life. They don't go around describing themselves as allies. Like, never. The best definition I've heard of an ally is that, like, you're standing close enough to the people who are marginalized that you're taking the bullets meant for them. Like, you are not an ally unless you're taking heat for being an ally. Unless it's, like, costing you something. That's how you know that you're on the right track. So that's what I think. To me, allies, like, the allies in my life have, like, been unbelievable for me in terms of helping me, and it's not something I think lightly of. So, yeah. Like Deneen and Steven and Herbie. Yeah.
Great. They're out.
Craig, yeah.
Yeah, you can tell. I don't know if you guys know Denny Akers, but I mean, the gay people
No,
are
Facebook Live, you can hear unless it's.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And for those of you that know Denny Akers, I know you're probably watching this, but I mean, she is an ally. She is somebody that sticks her neck out for gay people, and her husband Steven. I mean, they're amazing people, And I think they're amazing people to model yourselves after. If you're aspiring on how to love the gay community better, look at how they do it, because they've changed so many people's lives.
A lot of like true allies in the Adventist church become unemployable. Not all of them though. I know a lot of like quiet allies as well, who aren't sticking their necks out enough to get fired, but who are absolutely making a difference in the lives of LGBT. Because like a friend of mine, she came out to her priest, and the priest was like, "Yeah, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that." Totally changed her experience with faith and her coming out experience. So it's not to knock. I shouldn't have made that joke, because there's a lot of people who are in conservative denominations who don't say enough to get fired and are making a tremendous difference. It's incredible and wonderful. They're making a big difference in people's lives.
So we have two questions that are very similar, so I'm going to combine them. Is there a way that religious high school academies or colleges or universities can be more inclusive or effectively serve their student population that may be part of the LGBT community?
I think it comes in two parts. There's the question of, are LGBT people and communities visible on campus, and do we have the resources to support them? And I think both of those things go hand in hand. And I think it's also important for particularly Christian universities or schools to be very explicit about their stance. If they are affirming and if they are accepting and non-discriminating to LGBT people, that needs to be stated and very publicly announced, because the assumption is that they're not, because that's just the assumption Christianity holds in this country. Yeah.
I would say, and I'm going to try not to be too bold with this, but I mean, it's 2017, and if Christian universities and colleges don't start recognizing the gay populations at their school, there won't be a gay population at that school for much longer. Because the fact that you're neglecting an entire populace for not recognizing the way that they are, I mean, it was such a lonely experience being at a private Christian high school and college and feeling invisible, because you had a club with about 20 other gay people that you could go to where you felt safe. And then you occasionally had a professor's door that would put a symbol up there, and you knew that that professor was an ally, and you could go there and talk to that person. They didn't have that. You didn't know how it was going to be to take that professor's class. You didn't know the reaction that you were going to have from people walking in a room if you had a partner with you, or even if you didn't, you just didn't know. It's this big question mark. But I feel like it's 2017, and the population is big enough, and the presence is big enough in colleges where it needs to be talked about. There needs to be, whether you want to have a week where you just bring awareness about the community, just to show love and support. What's wrong with having a week where you just love each other? What's wrong with just showing a community a week of love? And so, I mean, we'll see if the Christian colleges that I know of step up to do that, but I mean, it's 2017, and I feel like it's time that you start to show that sort of love. And it might sound outrageous to have a week of gay pride at a Christian college or university, but you need to start being prideful of the students that are there, otherwise they're going to go somewhere else. And as Christians, I believe that it is our job to love each other and to keep the people that need to be at our schools, and that's how you're going to do it.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I think it's also important to have LGBT people in schools, spaces of power, leadership, and if they're not there, I think it's important to go seek them out and give them those opportunities and tools. And that also sends a message that we do accept and support LGBT people, not just quietly and privately behind closed doors accept them, but very open about it.
speak to a moment to specifically schools that are not at the place of being okay theologically with being affirming. Because I think even within that setting, there are some things that can be done to improve the situation. For one, I think that you need to understand the difference between like theology that isn't affirming and straight bigotry. And you need to learn to like help your professors to not do things like disparage the entire gay lifestyle, for example, or say something like that. You need to kind of really actively speak to what is not okay. Speak to it not being okay to use derogatory names. Speak to it not being okay to try to force someone else to come to a specific conclusion. Like, the thing is that if you're like a straight person and your theology is not affirming, you don't actually have to live with the consequences of an LGBT person having to actually live with their orientation and their gender. They're the ones who have to live with it. So kind of giving enough space for people to come to their own conclusions, to say, like, maybe there's a space where we can say, you know, this is where we're at theologically as an institution, but we can still say, if you're not at that place theologically, that doesn't mean you don't belong here. That doesn't mean you don't get to be here anymore. I mean, our Adventist schools have people who aren't Adventists in them, right? They have people who have different beliefs theologically, who come from different religions, who practice those different religions. So can there also be a space within our educational institutions for people to see things a little bit differently? Another thing is recognizing the true nature of what's happening. Because a lot of times when I hear your pastors or institutions, even recently in a Facebook Live event that Dan Jackson did, you know, talking about, when they talk about like the LGBT issue, they'll say things like, you know, if a gay couple came into our church, like, what? Hold on, you got it wrong. A gay couple is probably not coming into your church. Probably what it is a gay child or a queer child is growing up in your church. Like, that's what the problem is. The problem isn't those people, it's not, I mean, problem is quite a poor word, but the issue is not those people who are outside of us who are coming in. Because there's not a lot of LGBT people who wake up on a Saturday morning and say, or a Sunday morning and are like, I'm going to go to the Southern Baptist Church. So,
that's nice, it's pretty solid idea.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's just probably, so the biggest place of connection with LGBT people is those who are growing up in your churches. And that's what we need to be talking about. And not pretending like it's an us-them situation. Like, we are us. Like there's gay people in the church, guys, like, even if they're not out. And I hear this a lot of times from pastors from educational institutions. It's like, well, you know, if this was an issue in our church, we would address it. Hey, guess what? It's an issue in your church. Like, there are gay people in your church. You may not know it. Yeah, maybe, you know, if someone comes to our church and wants to become a part of our church from the LGBT community, like, that's not what the issue is. The issue is that we are there, whether you know it or not. You're like, kidding. So it's the whole deal, guys. It's the whole closet thing. Anyway, so that's the other thing. I'm gonna take too long if I'm not careful, but I also want to say, sometimes, and I think I've been guilty of this as well, there's an attempt to encourage people to be more compassionate. And so we talk a lot about the challenges of being in the LGBT community. We talk about suicide, we talk about shame, we talk about guilt, and that becomes the only narrative of what an LGBT person is. And so if you hang around these educational institutions a lot of times, even the people who are trying to be allies and trying to be helped, like, they never give a picture of hope, right? So it's like, man, I hope I can manage being celibate and depressed my whole life. Like, even if your theology is non-affirming, you have got to find a way to give more hope than that to children. Children, right? You've got to find a way to give more hope than that to children. So, yeah, that's kind of what it is.
So for me, I did not go to an Adventist university or college, so I'm going to speak more to the last form of Christian education that I really had, and that was at an Adventist high school. So for just affecting any change, or for what I would say to any teachers, academic advisors, counselors, or whoever works in the Christian post-secondary or secondary or education system, I would just say recognize when something is going wrong, even if your theology isn't affirming. Recognize that if a student comes up to you and is saying, "Hey, this one kid's giving me a really hard time. He's shouting all these really hurtful things at me. He's actively going out of his way to make things miserable for me." Don't say things like, maybe you shouldn't make yourself such a target. Maybe you should try and bring it down just a little bit. Because here, I'm going to let you guys know a little secret. The kid who is being harassed based on their sexuality, they are not the problem. Wild, right? Or another thing, if you are orchestrating a Bible camp or a camp out event, and the sleeping arrangements for such an event are randomly assigned, and one of the kids that in a particular camping group finds out that one of his roommates is gay, do not encourage them by allowing them to switch to a different group or switch to a different living situation, because that's really part of the problem. So it's a bit more complicated when you're dealing with minors, because they don't have the same autonomy that adults in universities or colleges would have. And you do have a lot more things to respond to. You have parents, you have all these other things to address, but just do your best to recognize that something is wrong, because they are if one of your students is coming to you, they're clearly feeling very powerless, feeling as though there's nothing you can do, and they're going to the only people that they figure can do something, and it turns out they're actually not doing a great job of that.
One more thing, it's not like a huge thing, it's a very little thing that I think most people can do, but I think it's also important to normalize the LGBT community, and that includes maybe training people to be more sensitive, maybe teaching people what pronouns are, not assuming that everybody in the audience is going to find a boyfriend or a girlfriend if they're, like the opposite sex partner. So just including them when addressing a crowd, or including them in the language on your forms, or in everyday things. Don't assume people are straight, and don't assume people are whatever gender you think they are. So I think that those are just little things that people can do to be a little more inclusive.
Courtesy goes a long ways. Yes.
Thank you. Our next question is a little bit more visionary. Do you have a vision of what an inclusive faith community looks like? And if so, can you paint that picture for us?
I think this church that has kind of put this together is a really good example of a church that is stepping up to the plate to be inclusive. It's not the popular thing to do in the Christian community, for sure. It might be in the world currently be the popular thing, but in the Christian community, it's not a popular thing to be a church and to step up boldly and say, we accept these people, and seeing the church do that, it feels good. It feels very good. It feels amazing. So I encourage, I see a future where more churches do that. I've seen it within my church that I go to, and I do see some changes in other churches, but I used to travel with an evangelist, and we went to church to church to church to church. And there's a lot of churches out there. There's a lot of people that are far behind where we are in Southern California. And so, I try not to let my optimism go further than the current reality, but I do see a future where churches like Paradox, and there's dozens out there that I can name, the Hollywood Church. There's so many places that are already out there, but I see a more unified body stepping forward. Because right now you kind of just see one there, one there, one there, and I envision within the next 5 to 10 years that it's going to be unified. It's going to be something where collectively we can all get together and say, hey, you know what, we love this group, and it won't be so sporadic where we have to have these discussions about how do we love people better. Well, you know, it'll be commonly accepted, I feel. So that's me.
I actually have a huge amount of optimism about this. There are organizations and networks getting into place right now that are really working to make LGBT inclusion a regular part of a lot of churches' faith traditions. And some of those churches are like very much, some of those churches are more like theologically in line with mainline liberal churches, and some of them are also more theologically conservative but LGBT affirming. And I really feel like I'm looking at some of the organizations that are in place, some of the leadership that's there, some of the church planting that's happening, I really believe like within 10 years, the face of Christianity is going to start to look really different. And that at some point, there's going to be a tipping point where there's a lot of pastors of conservative churches that would love for those churches to be affirming. And I think at some point, there's going to be a tipping point where they realize, I can actually bring this church through a discerning process to become LGBT affirming and not lose like half or 2/3 of my members. And when they start to realize that, and it starts to get easy, and they don't have to stick their necks out anymore, just be cynical about it, you're gonna see that happening a lot more. That point is going to come, and I do believe very much it's going to come in my lifetime, and maybe even within the next 10 years. I'm really excited about being on this kind of edge of it, you know? 10 years ago, LGBT Christianity was like barely like a thing, right? Yeah. And now it's so much more. There's so many more churches, so much more of a community. The change in 10 years has been dramatic, and I think another 10 years, I think it's going to be huge. My hope is that in making that transition, it won't just be a transition to LGBT affirmation, but that will be more of a transition to a focus on justice within Christian churches. Because I think we've gotten really, really off focus in terms of what the gospel even is, in terms of thinking of it in the terms of subscribing to certain propositional beliefs and believing the right doctrines and doing the right things. And I want us to do more than just say, well, one of those beliefs can be LGBT inclusion. Like, I want us to see that actually the church has been failing on justice over and over and over again, and we need to like get on the side of the marginalized and stop just trying to support things being the same way they always are, but be like the salt in the earth that makes, that really makes that difference and really makes that change. So that's what I'm hoping for within the church. And I think if you put people who are more in marginalized groups in positions of leadership, you're going to see more of that. So I hope that's what happens.
One really quick thing with that. I totally agree with you that it's probably within the next 10 years that we're going to start seeing some really cool inclusion happen. And one of the things that I have observed in just being in different denominations of the Christian church and growing up in the Seventh-day Adventist background and still having deep roots within that community, seeing where the Seventh-day Adventist church actually is in relativity to non-denominational churches, you would actually be surprised at how progressive Seventh-day Adventists are and how ahead of the game they are when it comes to showing people love and acceptance. And I know that might be a mixed generalization, but I traveled to 18 countries and I've been to many, many churches within those countries. And the ones that were the most iron fist and rejecting and hurtful were not Seventh-day Adventist ones. And growing up within the community and seeing the first church that stepped up to accept me was not a non-denominational church. No, they kicked me out. The Seventh-day Adventist church stepped up. So kudos to the Seventh-day Adventist church. And I feel like being so theologically sound as that community is, I feel like they are really the driving force behind a lot of this growth and push that is happening within the church. So that's all I have to say.
So for me, it's sort of a mixed bag. Just based on my own experience, not just in because while I was raised Seventh-day Adventist, I did go to multiple churches growing up of different denominations. And based on what I've seen, and like I've been to many countries, been to a lot of countries, not specifically on mission trips, not specifically with the intent of going on to discover other churches, but just seeing how certain attitudes are not only all over the world, but particularly here in the United States. It's for me not a very bright and hopeful and optimistic vision, more just one that I can see realistically happening. I see more a vision of, as we go on, each denomination, Adventism, Baptism, Catholicism, could have their own particular churches where, oh yeah, that particular one is a gay affirming church. Just like how now we presently have Black churches, Filipino churches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, they exist, but there's still a divide along those particular lines. And that's my vision. That's what I could honestly, realistically see happening in the next, in the foreseeable future. But as for whether or not I could, because I see, particularly with the Irish Church, the church I was raised in, I see so many chances that the church has had to really step up, but with certain decisions, particularly ones that have come up in the past couple of years, they took major step backwards. And that those decisions like that aren't just exclusive to the Adventist Church, really just a really bad sour taste in my mouth in terms of progress and diversity. So I honestly do not see a grand utopian unifying body of LGBT affirming churches. I really more just see sparse, like all over the place, different churches have their own rules when it comes to what they will and will not tolerate. Not the most positive outcome I know, but that's just where I am.
Kind of like drums in church. You don't see them all of them, but some of them do.
Some of them do. Not even most of them, now that I think about it. In fact, I wouldn't even say a fourth of them. The East Coast, Rome's in Washington. That's about
I would like to hear the question again in just a single sentence.
Yes. What is your vision for an inclusive faith community?
I think the way I interpret the question is that how do we go about prompting or encouraging our churches to become more inclusive and affirming churches? And if you as an individual are interested in doing that in your church, I would say encourage conversation along that direction, first of all. Get people together and say, what can we do? How can we make our church more loving, more kind, more inclusive, more affirming? Talk to the pastor about it. Get him involved, or her, and say, this is important. People are dying. They're dying. They're committing suicide. They're being thrown out of their homes by their parents at a very young age onto the streets. I work in the center of Los Angeles, right in the heart of the Skid Row district. And I see young people out on the streets. And a large percentage of them are LGBT young people who have been thrown out of their homes. It's a travesty. It's terrible.
40%.
Yeah. It's a very high percentage. And of just the transgender community alone, 41% attempt suicide. That's a staggering statistic.
My question and off of that is, shouldn't it be the church's responsibility? You see organizations like, you're employed through the county, but there's organizations like the LGBT Center and the communities of people that have stepped up to open the doors and say, hey, you know what, you weren't welcome in your home, but you're welcome here. Isn't that what the church is? Isn't that the essence of what the church body should be? So to me, that shows an opportunity for a church to open their arms to a group of people that is in need.
Thank you. Did you have another comment? Perfect. So our next question was written to you, Alicia, but I actually feel like everyone could answer it in their own way. We'd love to hear about the recent advocacy work you've been involved in, or any programs you've been involved in on this topic.
Cool, thanks for asking. So I blog generally every Friday. I have a new blog out. And it's kind of a mixture of like affirming theology as well as just various thoughts on topics mostly related to LGBT issues of faith. So I blog on that and kind of do it on Facebook, and it's been encouraging to see that the numbers have kind of kept up in terms of people who are reading it. So I'd love to have you check that out, aliciajohnson.com. And I do stuff like this, speaking at Paradox and here, and I'm speaking at the Reformation Project in Chicago pretty soon, which I'm super excited about. Amazing organization and church in Mississippi. If you want to have me come to your church or organization, I would be more than happy to do that. Just let me know. And I also just recently, I'm in the process of starting a nonprofit. Because I'd like to kind of be able to go more places and be able to afford to keep doing this work since I don't have the admin's paycheck anymore. So I'm in the process of starting a nonprofit. I'm also considering writing a book of affirming theology for the Adventist Church, and I'm considering doing that, and then maybe, I haven't even said this publicly yet, but I'm considering maybe doing that and then kind of taking it on the road and promoting it in different places around the country. So I haven't quite got to the point where I'm ready to pull the trigger on that, but I'm looking into that and thinking about doing that. So yeah, that's what I'm doing, and it's pretty fun. And just if I get any chance to, there's other things I'm thinking about too. I shouldn't probably say it because I'm just thinking about it now. Sometimes I want to be super activist and just take it to people. So, anyways, certain organization coming to Phoenix.
Is the question about who we as panel members are doing to be advocates, or is it about all of us as a group here being advocates? All of us, all of you, not just us up here, can be an advocate. If the opportunity arises that you're drawn into a conversation, do you tend to turn away from it, or do you tend to get involved and say, I support LGBT people? What do you do? I support my own community, the transgender community. I had a Facebook transgender support group that I started in 2012. It grew to a size of over 400 members in a very short period. But for various reasons, I decided to let that go and to take on membership and being a co-moderator of another group that is called Trans Women of Faith. And it's not Adventist, it's non-denominational, primarily Christian, trans women. They do have some trans men too there, but that's the title of it. And I love doing things to support my own community. Some of you have seen the film that Danine and Stephen did, bearing my name on that. And I had fear in actually doing that film. You notice I didn't attach my last name to that film. I have very important reasons for doing that. There There are people in my family that have fear about what will happen as a result. So, it's important to be careful with what you do and how you do it. But be supportive in any way you can. Be an advocate.
It's amazing. The best thing that you can do to become an advocate is just change the conversation. I know it sounds small. You can go and start the nonprofit, and that's amazing. And it takes so much courage to step out like that. But if you are just sitting here curious about how is it that you can address this problem, how is it that you can help, changing the dialogue. The moment that somebody says something that doesn't settle right with you, don't turn your head. Say, hey, that's not okay. I agree with this community of people, and I love them. Change the dialogue. And I think that's something that we're all capable of doing. I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate for Christianity just as much as I am for the LGBT community. And I have found an interesting way about going to be an advocate in my career. And I'm mid-transition with what I'm ultimately doing. And I'm putting this out there in the universe and asking you guys to pray about it, but also soon hopefully be working at the Los Angeles LGBT Center. And I'm hoping to use that as a really good platform to actually minister within the gay community out there in West Hollywood. I kind of immersed myself in the culture the moment that I came out of the closet. I kind of just jumped right into West Hollywood and started just getting to know people. And some of the stories, heartbreaking. Like, my gosh, I could sit here for probably an hour and just make you guys cry, but I won't, because it's sad. Sad to see the rejection that some people face. It's sad to see some 70, 80-year-old men dying of AIDS without a single person there to show them love. It's sad, And I look at that and I think, what an amazing opportunity to show the love of Christ, and in a way that isn't usually done. And I think we're going to see things on two ends of the spectrum start to move closer towards the line of love and acceptance and equality. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of the gay community come back to church, and we're going to start seeing the church reach out to the gay community. And I think it'll be an exciting and beautiful thing to see, and it's cool to see you working on one side, and hopefully I'll be working on the other side, and we'll be in the middle somewhere. But it's, be an advocate. Just stand up. Say what is right. Say what is on your heart. That's something that we can all do.
I already kind of said what I do, but I'm trying to work on having a more cohesive LGBT community visible on campus. That's one. I think also just as a future health professional, it's also important to continue to advocate for your patients and advocate in your work settings to, when you're presenting a patient or when you're addressing someone, use their preferred names, use their correct pronouns, don't assume things about them, and obviously don't be judgmental. So, yeah. Don't be scared.
Thank you. Our next question is about self-care. I'd love to hear about what do you do for self-care? One question was, is there any daily affirmations that you have, or maybe Bible verses that you find special comfort in, or any rituals that you found kind of help you recharge?
I'll keep it short, but I mean, I'm human. I'm not a robot. I pray like everybody else does. When you wake up in the morning, if you want to have a good day, you get down on your knees, and you lift your heart up to God. And you know that a lot of times, if you don't, your days are a lot more difficult because you're not placing your trust in the area that's stable and consistent. So that's what I do. That's my way of self-maintaining. I wake up in the morning, I pray, and I ask for God's grace every single day, because I'm just as much a sinner as anybody else in this room. I'm not sinless. So I pray, and I pray for grace. That's the only care that I need. I probably need a lot more than that, but that's the only care that matters.
I feel like God wakes me up early almost every day to meditate, to think about ways to be better at being an advocate. Honestly, I do. Every single morning. I get about 6 hours sleep on the average, sometimes less, because I feel the presence of God working on my soul. There's a fire in my bones that I have got to do
do more. That's the way I feel. There's just got to be more done. And so I seek ways of doing more. And I pray to God that I can do more. Because I love my fellow man.
There's a lot of things that I do. Exercise regularly. There's a point at which I literally, like when I was preparing to come out, felt like I was literally trying to outrun depression in the gym because it was just so hard. I would just get on the treadmill and be like, I gotta do this or I'm gonna like fall behind. So like things like that, connecting with people who are supportive and affirming of me. I get a lot of like hate mail and love mail. Try to linger in the love mail. And really like when somebody sends me, and I don't always get a chance to respond or a chance to respond at length, but anytime someone sends me something telling me that the work I'm doing helps them, it means so much to me. And I just stop and I remind myself like this is what matters. This is why you're doing what you're doing. For me, I don't know that I've ever felt so aligned with what it means to be Christian than in doing this work. And I don't know that the gospel has ever made more sense to me than in doing this work. And so, I really believe that God is with me and all of us as we do this work and trying to focus on that and remember that. And in many ways, I'm in kind of a deconstruction, reconstruction / phase of my faith. And so continuing to read, continuing to try different faith practices to kind of help restore some of the wounds of what has been damaged in this process for me, and coming to a more authentic, robust kind of faith and understanding of God. Just a little bit at a time, not be afraid of the process, but just delve into it. So, be good. Pretty solid. Yeah. And then sometimes I just I don't know, eat chocolate and watch movies.
You are a woman after my own heart. Where have you been my whole life?
I'm just waiting for you.
Wait, I'm confused.
It's okay. I was confused for a long time. High school has never changed. Good. No evidence.
I think it's important to have people like close to you that do support from you, just to like get energy or to vent or to just talk to every day. I think it's helpful to take care of yourself when you are interacting with people who don't support you, to draw really good boundaries. And it's really hard to do that, but especially if they're close family or people who have some sort of authority over you. I think it's good to know that you don't have to fight every single fight. I think this is also where allies can come in, where it's not the job of LGBT people to always educate or change people's minds in conversation, and that's like where allies can kind of take the hit. We don't have to always prove someone right or prove someone wrong. So just remember, like, it's not your job to change everybody. Your job is to take care of yourself first, and then if you have the energy, go out and do what you can.
She just inspired me with something. But one of the things that I do aside from pray, wake up in the morning, and just start off on the right step. But one of the things that I think is important is to know where you are at. And I mean that to everybody, not just gay people, but to be able to wake up in the morning and identify where you are at emotionally, where you are at physically, because not every fight is meant to be fought. Sometimes you can wake up and feel so depressed that you don't want to argue with anybody. You don't want to have to try to none of us necessarily signed up to have to try to advocate for this. We have later on in life, but none of us were born and said, hey, I just want to argue about my relationships for the rest of my life because that's just really what I want to do. It's something that just landed in our laps. But some days you just don't want to do it. I used to write about my journeys on this platform called Thrive Global, and it was more like a lifestyle blog, and I got more hate mail than love mail. I didn't have a lot of positive things on there at all. And after writing like 4 or 5 articles and getting them published, I was so discouraged after reading what people were saying, and I was like, I don't want to write this anymore because it was so emotionally hard for me just to hear all of this all the time. So I stopped. I closed that channel, and I felt very healthy doing that. So I think whether you're gay, straight, wherever you identify on the spectrum, wake up in the morning, know where you're at, and it's okay to be depressed. It's okay to be whatever it is that you are, because we're human. We're not perfect robots. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Just to kind of paraphrase a few overlapping questions. Why do you think straight Christians are maybe slow or very defensive about this topic? And is there one fundamental foundational belief in the greater church that would need to change in order for us to do better?
I think a lot of Christians are really conflicted because they really want, on the one hand, they do want to love and care for everyone. Like the most conservative, the most traditional Christian wants that. Like, I don't think they want to make the lives of LGBT people hard and miserable. And they also don't want to be unfaithful to Scripture. So I think that some people, particularly the ones who maybe are more compassionate, really feel that tension. And maybe there's a little bit of fear there that they're getting it wrong, or that they don't understand, like, why is it that these people are saying that we're hurting them and all we're trying to do is be faithful to the Bible. And they've been told again and again and again by people they trust, people who have helped them to know and understand God, people who are present themselves and probably are deep scholars of Scripture, and they've been told over and over again that Scripture is clear on this and that there's no two ways about it. And so they're torn between those things. And that's a legitimate difficulty and challenge, and I think there's a level of defensiveness within that kind of cognitive dissonance that happens in there. And sometimes maybe there's a bit of dissonance because they also realize that at some point, and maybe that point is already passed, this is becoming an existential issue for the church about whether or not the church is even going to survive and be relevant to society, because they're losing the moral high ground in a world who's looking at the church and saying, all you guys are doing is like knocking down people. So all those things can come into those conversations, and when you say, hey, you guys are causing us harm, and all of those things come into that conversation. It's like, well, are you telling me that I can't believe in the Bible, or are you telling me that we should throw out morality? And I think a lot of people don't know how to reconcile those things, which is why I've done a lot of work on affirming theology, because I don't think that, I think that sometimes LGBT Christians make a mistake of leaving the Bible to traditionalists. And just kind of, when you come out, your faith tends to shift in a way, oftentimes, that those kinds of ways of thinking don't matter as much anymore. And so you just kind of abandon the Bible to traditionalists. I love the Bible, and I love delving into and understanding like what Paul really meant and how these things would have come across the original audience and things like that. And I think that by doing that kind of work, we allow people to see that there's a better way, that you don't have to experience that dissonance. You don't have to experience that dissonance between I want to love people and I want to be faithful to Scripture. Like, it's so reconcilable. It's like right there. The Christian church has reconciled these things historically over and over again. You think of Christianity as static, but it's not. So yeah, there's a better way. There's a better way. We just need to have the courage to step into that, I think.
I think think it's maybe a sense of security for a lot of people, especially if you are 100% sure, whatever that means. You just don't have any way to empathize with this because you don't struggle with this. And so I think for people who really do like want a hard yes or no, is this right or wrong? I think this is one of the few areas where they can say like, take a hard stance and not have to worry about the consequences, because when it comes to like the Ten Commandments, there are so many things that people wouldn't argue with, but there's so many gray lines, like, well, everybody lies and everybody sometimes steals. Things like that, like that stuff, it's hard to take a hard stance on because we do it ourselves all the time. And when you're straight, you don't struggle with issue, and it's easier to distance yourself from it and say like, my faith is built on this rock, when really it's not as stable as we'd like to think. So maybe just a sense of security. People are comfortable with change, different differences that we don't experience.
I don't think anybody likes change. I think that's a very common thing. I think change is hard. I've changed everything from the people I was dating to my political views to the church I went. I feel like my entire life has been nothing but change, and I think that's kind of why I have become kind of like a chameleon. And I'm actually very open to hearing things from different points of view that I don't agree with. And I love talking with people that I don't agree with because I see the world in a different light. And that doesn't mean that I'm right or wrong or they are right or wrong. We're just helping each other. But to get to that place where you are mentally open to just listening, that's the hard part, I feel like, for a lot of people, is that we are so bogged down by tradition and things that have just been told that it's a hard thing to even, where do you start? Because I've only been told this, and these are the people that I have gone to ask for, questions about the Bible. And this is what they've always told me. So, where do you start? But, seeing that, people are, nobody is incapable of change. Even God changed his mind. Nineveh was not destroyed. He was planning on wiping that place off the face of the earth, and he changed his mind. So if even God can change his mind and open up his ears to seeing things in a different light, I think he's kind of inclining us to do the same thing, just to be open, not to change anything, just be open to hearing things in a different sort of way. And I think that's a really good first step. Just open your ears and your heart.
Sometimes people have been taught to be afraid of us too. Taught that we're like terrifying people.
I won't sneeze on it.
We've been blamed for everything from Hurricane Katrina to the fall of the fire.
Don't forget 9/11. Is it Harvey our fault?
Harvey was our fault, yeah.
I like that one.
That was us.
So we're down to our final two questions. I know time's been by today. First of all, what would you say, what words of encouragement would you give to someone who may be in the church and currently starting the journey of questioning their sexuality or gender identity and trying to navigate that in conjunction with their faith in Christianity?
I've done this very recently, so yeah, it's really weird how much my life has changed in a short time. So here's some really important pieces of advice I have for you. Only do as much as you can every day. Push yourself, but don't push yourself too much. Just do what you can handle. Don't think about everything you have to deal with. Don't think about every relationship. Don't just take it one day at a time. Just do what you can do that day and know that people have gone before you and they've gone through this and it's turned out all right. And it'll turn out all right for you too. Just take it a little bit at a time and have faith that other people have gotten there and you'll get there too. Don't come out until you're ready. Don't feel like you have to force yourself to come out before you're ready to come out. Do as much as you can to give yourself a support system before you come out. Of people who are going to be there to support you. Go to a PFLAG meeting. go to a GSA or some type of a support group at your school, get to know queer people as much as you're comfortable with. You're probably more paranoid than you need to be about getting outed, but it does happen. But there are a good number of people who knew about me before I came out publicly, and somehow I never got outed. I don't know. So it worked out for me. What else? What other advice do I have? I'm gonna regret not saying something because I know somebody is listening who needs to hear this. I don't know. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just know that you're gonna be okay, and just know that it's gonna work out, and it's gonna be so wonderful and amazing to be out. And you're gonna go through this incredible rainbow phase where everything is amazing, and it's gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay, but a lot of things probably are gonna change. Here's the thing: if you're a minor and you're still under the care of parents who you cannot trust to come out to, or if you're in a situation where you might lose your job when you come out, be conscious and considerate of those things. You might need to wait to come out to your parents until financially you can do so, or until they don't have legal power over you anymore. Sadly, that might be something that you have to do. And know that you have an entire community of LGBT people waiting for you and loving you and wanting to support you when you come out. It's going to be amazing.
To anyone who is young or just in general questioning their sexuality or gender orientation, and if you reach the point where you are for sure not straight, not cis, and not particularly what you've been raised to believe is normal, like what Alicia said, it's entirely your prerogative to recognize that aspect of you and keep that to yourself as long as you feel like you might see characters on TV that you love or YouTubers that you follow who are ready to come out and they have a great experience, but understand that that is not always indicative of reality. Only you can know your world and your surroundings. And if you have had the strength to come out and people are just making life hell for you and actively going out of their way to hurt you or make you miserable, understand that you're more mature than you're more mature than those people. You are smarter than you're smarter than those people as well. And you are stronger than they are. You're stronger than the people who feel the need who derive their joy or their, it sounds like such a PSA term, but you're better than those people who derive their self-esteem from bringing you down. All around, you're an entire, look around at people who you recognize are like you. You are an entire conversation, an entire talking point, and that is a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
You don't owe anybody to stay in their lives if they make your life miserable, and that includes
Not even family.
Yes, that includes family. A lot of LGBT people talk about family of choice. So don't feel it's your choice. If someone's gonna make your life miserable, it's totally up to you, how you're gonna respond to that situation for church, for family, or whatever. So, yeah. Love you.
I love panel discussions because you get so many points of view because we each had a different experience, came out at different points in our lives and encountered different sorts of resistance. And so you're going to get a different answer and advice from each person. But I guess I can tell you what I did, and it wasn't necessarily the most healthy, but it worked for me. And I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to completely negate it by what happened afterwards. But I walled up. I grew skin like an elephant or a rhino to where I didn't care if you accepted me or loved me because I was okay. Me and God were good. And I took that even to the core to where I knew when I came out to my family, that if they love me, great. And if they choose not to, I'll be okay. And I chose to have this sense of resilience, which I thought was the way for me to be strong at the time. And my gosh, I was strong for a matter of a year and a half until that catches up to you. And being strong starts to really, really, really take its toll. And it might be instinctual if you're like me, if you are a type of person that doesn't like to feel vulnerable. It's okay. It's okay to be strong, but just be aware that what's going to come next is after your strength wears out is a period where you will feel very, very judged and hurt because every single look, every single reaction that has happened in the last year and a half will catch up to you. And in a matter of 2 months, they will haunt you and just eat away at you. And so be strong, and then when it's time for you to let your guard down and know that it will be okay, because you're never going to make everybody happy. You're never going to make anybody love you. And the sooner that you come to that realization, the sooner you'll be happier in life. Trust me, that's not a secret that a gay person knows. It's just the sooner that you stop caring about what people think, the sooner you will be happy. But sorry, that was our one secret.
We've got to have something.
But what I would say is I really want to emphasize that second part, because I feel like there's a lot of people within the community that are so strong. And I not that I'm biased or anything, but I honestly think that gay people and anybody part of the LGBT community are just so strong because of the emotional trials that you have to go through. And there's physical trials, there's things that are strenuous that everybody has to go through, but just the emotional trials, some people getting rejected by family, relationships, and it's crazy. So embrace the strength, but embrace the pain as well, and know that the pain is temporary and that it will get better. And that's the part that you should focus on and feel every single part of it, because the longer that you ignore that pain of being rejected, there's no question whether the pain will catch up to you. You might be 60 when you finally feel the pain of people in the church not loving you. But at least you realize it then. You can maybe realize it that much sooner and come to terms with the fact that, it's okay. It's okay. And it'll be better. So
I think it's important to know what your priorities are. I think number one, I think getting to know yourself is the most important thing. If you're comfortable with yourself, you can go out and find who truly supports you. And I know a lot of people who are scared to tell their friends or scared to tell members of the Christian community because they are scared that they'll be rejected. But I think it's good to know that how they respond is it's in a way a test of like how much they will care about you. And if you want people who you're afraid of coming out to be your closest friends, then you might just live in fear your whole life. Like if you find people, the sooner you are willing to be vulnerable, the sooner you will find people who will stand by you for who you are, and not just who you think you are. And I think that's where you get most of your strength and your support from. So it's better to find those people sooner than later.
And for our closing thought, we would just love to hear, is there anything that you'd like to say to the audience as far as next steps, challenges you'd like for them to take with them, or if you want to touch on anything that you feel like we missed, we'd love to just hear your closing thoughts.
Closing thought. One of the best things that you can do for LGBT people is let them know, let everybody in your life know. Because you don't know who's LGBT and who's not. You don't know. Let everybody in your life know up front that you're a safe person. Make that clear. Don't put the burden on someone who's closeted and afraid to take the chance with you to decide whether you're okay or not, especially with kids in your life, especially with like your children or your niece or your nephew or whatever. Make it clear and obvious and upfront that you're a safe person so that they don't have to guess. Because you could literally save someone's life by doing that if they know that you're someone they can come to.
2 points that kind of better. One, you're gonna make mistakes just like any other person, especially if you're coming out as a kid. You're gonna. That's yes, as her giggle implied. That is a severe understatement. But you're going to make some very large, spectacular mistakes. And while it might feel like you are the only person who is struggling with their identity and struggling with their sexuality, you're really not. It might feel like it, especially if you're like at a school where you are almost literally the only openly gay kid in your class. But it doesn't mean that there aren't other, like, statistically that isn't true. There are going to be other kids, just they, like I said, they might not be out yet. So, kind of swinging back to what we brought up earlier. So, I was at a point in my coming out journey where I was, not only was I fairly secure with who I was, but I was also under the mistaken impression that I was the only person who was out, and I was secure enough in who I was. I had a lot of, I took a lot of role models in TV and through YouTube and through authors that I knew. So I read their stories and I understood what it was like. And so I figured, well, surely if I was able to come out and if I was able to accept who I was, then surely that means everyone else must be able to as well. And obviously, if no one else is out and if nobody else has confirmed that they're gay, then that means, oh, well, then surely no one else is. And that is where we get to Brayden, somebody who, when we were in school, was not out and was not at that point as yet. And that also ties into mistakes. I assumed that, because as I mentioned earlier, he was very homophobic, and I assumed that, oh, well, anyone in this day and age who is homophobic must really just stem from a pure dislike or pure hatred of gay people. And he would not understand what it is like to be a gay person and what it is like to go through these experiences. And I was very, 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 very wrong. Yeah, so that's a big mistake you can make is thinking that there aren't other people going through what you're going through. They might have it worse than you. It might not be as dramatic for them as it was for you, but understand that there are other people out there that are like you. And to just flat out assume that no one else is experiencing what it's like to come out or to struggle with their sexual orientation is not only invalidating other people's experiences, it's also kind of really self-centered.
Just a quick comment to tie into what Alicia was saying. How do we go about telling people that we're safe? How does God tell us that he's safe or she's safe? I think, in my own mind, I've come to this conclusion, and it was part of the film that was done bearing my name, that what we need to exude is that no matter what you decide, what choices you make, who you are, what you think, what you feel, what you believe, no matter what, I will always love you. Nothing can ever separate you and me from that love that we have for each other. Theology is important. Hermeneutics is important. Doctrines are important. All these things that we study, the Bible is important, but there's going to be a time that will come when the Bible will not be important anymore. When we're on the other side, Who's going to be a theologian? Well, you need to be a theologian, Alicia. On the other side.
I'm gonna go through an identity crisis.
You won't need that anymore. We won't need the Bible anymore because we see through a glass darkly right now, right? But then we're going to see face to face. So we don't need all these things, all these discussions that we're having. All those things are important now, but they're going to fade away. Go back and look at 1 Corinthians 13. Read through that. That gets me every time I read it. All these things are so important to us. Prophecy. Faith. Even faith is going to come to an end. Do you realize that? Faith and hope are going to come to an end because we won't need them anymore. We're going to be right in the presence of God. Right? So all those things are important now, but they're going to come to an end. What's left? Of all those things, what's the very last thing that's mentioned in that chapter? L-O-V-E. That's where it's at. Nothing can separate you from my love for you. That's what we've got to exude.
After this amazing discussion, I feel like we have really just covered a lot, and it is a lot to talk about. It is a lot because we're talking about our entire lives. It has been something that's been a struggle, and for you guys to sit here and listen to try to understand what it's like. I mean, thank you guys for being here, but to simplify and to just kind of bring it around what can be done to love people better, I would say immediately, don't put it off. Don't wait till Monday. I would say immediately think of an LGBTQ, whatever the letters that they keep adding that I can't keep up with. Plus LGBTQ plus. Think about who you have in your life, and every single person has somebody. You do, trust me. And reach out to them. Tell them that you love them. And even if you are not affirming, tell them that you love them, unless you don't. And then if you don't, own it. That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. But it's time that you be real with how you feel about people. And that's honestly, you can't say that you love people and then treat them like anything less. So that's all I will say. Sorry to say that, but thank you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you just for yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying goodbye. I will. Thank you for being here. Thank you for just letting us share with you.
I just want to say, if this has been something meaningful and helpful to you, please, we did a Facebook Live. Please find that, and it'll be shareable afterwards through Paradox Ministries, and please share it on your page. And I mean, if you get a few of you do that, it can really expand so if you think this has been a useful, good conversation that you would like other people to benefit from, please do not forget to go share. Do it today while it's still a weekend and people have time to peruse it for a bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anything? All right. Awesome. Love you guys. Thank you so much for coming.
And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to find a Paradox staff member with a badge and we'll be happy to talk to you.
I'll show you first.
I'll come with you.